Okay, everybody, welcome. This is the first live stream of our online class. Unlike the previous two videos, which I recorded using recording software, this one I'm not only recording, but broadcasting. As well, I'm using Microsoft Teams for this recording, which is what the school division would recommend that we use now, not Zoom. I find that Teams is okay. The video is okay, but if you happen to join into this meeting and have any questions, just let me know. I'm conducting this as if it was like our live class, and so please let me know if you have any questions, issues, or concerns, and I'm happy to address them. Okay, so what I had planned for today, I'm going to share my screen with everybody, is to here we go, is to, just one sec, just make sure this still works. One sec, there we go, is to go over the beginning of conditional statements, part one. So right off our main website, I'm going to go to our page, the Computer Science 20S page, off the courses link. And just one sec, I think someone's trying to join. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, and from here on our Computer Science 20S page, if you look at the last 2 weeks, so the April 6th to 10th week, I did record a video of that class, what I would have recommended for that class. And what I did in that class was recommendations for part one of the variables unit. So I went over assessment 1 and assessment 2. And you can watch that video if you're having trouble with variables 1 and 2. Then last week, April 13th to the 17th, I also recorded a video where I essentially completed the variables unit. So I took a look at, what was it? Sorry. I looked at part 2 of variables. So now what I want to do this week, week 10, or April 20th to 24th, is to look at conditional statements part 1. Now I realize it says here you could start looking at part 2, but I'm just going to look at part 1, which means assessment 1 and 2. Next week, I'll go over part 2 of conditional statements. So essentially always be kind of on the back end of each of these weeks as I go through these videos. So what that means is here during this week, I'm going to open the conditional statements unit folder, so everything. I'll open the video for part 1, the presentation for part 1. I'm not going to watch the video or read the entire presentation to you. I'm just showing you they're there as references. The hints is there as well, which comes from the first example. And then once we're done, we can look at the handed instructions. What we are going to look at are the first 2 assessments, and I'm going to go through them as if I was doing them. So assessment 1 and assessment 2. I'm not going to go through the case study because everything you need to know about the case study is in the case study. And I'll even show the alternative way that you can do conditional statements 1 and 2. So here are those things open. Here's last week's video, or sorry, 2 weeks ago, and here's last week's video if you want to watch those. Here's the entire folder of conditional statements content. Here's the video. Wait a little bit. Excuse me. That would definitely be something I would want to watch, is one video, which also the first example. Okay, you can also find that first example linked in here from the code standpoint, and you will see that first example show up in the hints. You can also, instead of watching the video, just scroll through the presentation and read it this way, and eventually get down to the example, which you can see here. Down here, yeah, where you actually have the code typed in. So you have all those different things along with the hints, which goes through the code example and gives you hints there to help you approach this first programming problem. Once we get that done, I'll just remind you that you also then have the handed information that you can use. when you want to hand in the conditional statements unit, okay? And the alternative assessments page where you'd learn how to alternatively do this on this website right here. Oh, still got stuff up from last time I used it. Okay, so that's there as well. We'll get to that in time. Okay, so this is the first conditional statements problem. It's a tough one. So you can read through it, see the different examples. There's a bunch of hints on the second page, including a little flow chart for you. Okay, if you still didn't quite understand it, you could certainly go into the folder under demonstrations, find problem 1 and actually download it to try it out. That's an option as well. Keep that. And I'm going to run that. It's going to probably tell me it's a virus. I'm going to run it anyways. And there it is. So you can actually try this program out as well. I'm not going to actually do it right now, but those are all options that you can do. And so here I have it open. All right, let's start with some simple stuff. Let's do the exit button. Okay. Now this is the conditional statements unit, so it assumes everything known from the variables unit, including comments, is available. That this button exits the application or this program. The line is application.exit. And you can test that right away just to make sure it works. So that's always a simple line of code you can put in. If nothing else works, you can get design marks and you can get a little bit of marks for at least making a line of code that shuts down the program. Okay, that's why I generally tend to include an exit button in most of these programs. Okay, but the main bulk of this program comes from the enter button. So just get that ready to go. But before we get too far into this, let's not forget that this is now a problem that will require you to put your comments in at the top. And you can get those from previous examples, or if you want, you could go into something like the examples, although I don't have it in this example. You could find it in the variables example, where at the top of that, there was this basic little comment block. Have your name, have the date, obviously not this date, but today is April 20th. My name, this is the conditional problem 1, and a description of what it is, right? This is a grade averager. Average out the grades, okay? That's what it does. Now, the other thing that this particular problem needs is some global variables. You can see that, especially if you were to do the example and take a look at the hints. And there, right from the hints, it tells you a little bit about that. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to make an integer for a count of how many test scores are entered. I'm also going to keep track of them all added together, or the sum. Now, because test scores could use decimals, I'm going to switch to a double for the sum. The integer for count is because you can only enter whole number amount of scores, meaning you can't enter like 2.5 scores. All right, now let's get down to the enter button. So the first thing we have to do is we have to read the text from the text box. This is something you would have done all through the variables unit, so no different here. I'm going to make a value by going into the text box and getting the text out of it. Okay, then I would convert this to a number. It's actually a number we need. So I'm going to call this a score, and it's equal to convert to a double that value. Okay, and now I need to check the score. Now this is where the conditional statement comes in. This is where the conditional comes in. Okay, so this is where the new code would come in that that we would have learned from this conditional statements unit. So this again is where it's important that you have seen that presentation and done the example, which we would have done in class. Okay, let's get back to this. All right, so basically what I would say is if that score is greater than 100, that's a problem. So that's where I would use the code for a message box. And I would show in that message box that scores must be under 100. That would be what I would give to the user as a message. And I can test that. Before I do any more code, I could test to see that this condition is working. So 200, if I try to enter that, that is over 100. However, 50 is not. And notice it doesn't appear when I click it that way. Okay? This if will follow with an else. The else indicates, okay, it's not over 100. So what am I going to do with that score? I'm going to add it to my running total. That's what I'm going to do with that score. So my sum equals my sum plus that score. This is a weird line of code, but it's necessary in this unit to add it to itself. You can also see this in the hints as well. We had basically a very similar line of code here doing that in the hints. So the hints aren't exactly the same as the problem, but they're close, and so you have to interpret it. Now I also need to count this as a score by increasing the count by 1. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to say count equals count plus 1. So this is also the same kind of code where I'm adding onto myself, just like I did up here. This time I'm just adding 1 onto myself, whereas up here I was adding my score onto a sum. So there, that would be the code I would use for the enter button. Okay, now the next button I would look at would be the average button. Here I need to calculate the average. Now, if you don't know what average is, you could certainly read through the hints on the assignment sheet where it talks about what average is. You could also Google search, like, what is average? Hopefully your math training has at least taught you a little bit of what it is, right? So it's the mean or the median calculated by dividing the sum of the variables by the count of the variables. Okay, perfect. So I can figure that out. So I'm going to make a double called average. It's equal to the sum divided by the count. Okay, and then I got to show the user. Since I don't have any labels in this program, I'm once again going to use the message box. I'm going to show the user that the average is, and then attach that new variable that has the answer in it. Okay, let's give it a run and test. Okay, so I'm going to enter a 50, enter it in. I'm going to put in a 60, enter it in. I'm going to put in a 45, put it in. I'm going to put in a 200, and it's going to yell at me. And then I'm going to click average. All right, 51.6. Let's say they got an 80, and then a 90. That should make the average go up. Let's see. Yeah, it's now 65. That's up. But then they got a 15 and a 6. That should make it go down, which it has. And let's just bring it back up a bit again. 50. There we go, 49.5. But I'm going to put in a 500. It says it's over 100, and it shouldn't count it, so it should still be 49.5, which it is. Final button to code would be the reset button. Since this program has no visual labels or pictures, I just need to reset my global variables, because global variables always remember their values. So when I'm resetting, my sum has to go back to 0, and my count has to go back to 0. And that should reset my two global variables. And that should do it. That should be all the code we need to solve this problem. Okay? So that solves the first one. Okay? Now we would move on to the second programming problem. Okay? This one is actually, I think, a little bit easier, but it's a lot longer in terms of the code you have to write. Okay? The first one was definitely tougher, but it actually didn't require a ton of code. This one, there's a lot to read about the problem itself, a lot to do in the design, and then there's a whole big page of hints on the back, which includes some sort of pseudocode as to what we need to do there. Okay, so I have this one ready to go. Let's once again do the easy stuff. We'll do the exit button. And for that, I'm going to steal some of the code right from the one we just finished. I'm going to also steal or copy paste, which is our friend, comments from that one to this one. Conditional statements problem 2. This is our cash register. Okay. And this time I'll work in slightly reverse order. I'm going to do the reset button. Because if I think about it, what is the reset button going to do? It's going to reset some of these things on the design. So for example, this variable or this label right here, my label for subtotal, the text in it is going to go back to the words subtotal with a colon. That's what it's going to go to. Okay. I can think about some of my other labels. My label for GST will go back to just the words GST. Okay, you can see that right there. Same with PST. A little bit of copy paste will help with this. My PST label will go to PST. My label for total. Whoops. We'll just go to the word total. And the change one will be the last one. So. Okay, that way when I reset it, those will go back to the way they look right now, which is just like this. Because obviously when I calculate, I'm going to put numbers in there. So I'm going to reset them back to the way they are now. I'm also going to reset these check boxes. So my checkbox, for example, for pepperoni, dot checked will be equal false. Actually, I can test that right now if I'd like. If I run this and I have the pepperoni box checked, reset should uncheck it, which it did. Okay, and I can do that with all 4 of the checkboxes. Mushrooms, peppers, and onions. So that unchecks all those boxes. And I can even uncheck these 2, or the way I have it set up right now is it starts off with the large checked, but I don't have to do that. So I'm going to say large dot checked will be true, and medium will be false. And radio buttons work the same as checkboxes. So they either check or uncheck, even if it is that little black circle. So if I put this there, check a few of these off, I happen to reset it, it would go back to that setting there. And then the other thing I'd reset is this text box here for the cache. So txt cache text equals nothing. So I'm sort of working a little out of order here, but I'm going to take care of that reset button right now, just so it's done. Okay, now on to the calculate button. This is the big one, and this is where you get most of the hints in the problem itself. Create any needed constants, create any needed variables. So let's start by doing that. Our constants, again, learned in the variables unit, are things that don't change. So here I can go back to the description stuff here. The price of a large isn't changed. The price of a regular, the price of toppings. So I'm going to incorporate those in here. A constant double for the price of a large pizza is $15. The price of a medium pizza is $10. Okay, so constants are written in all capital letters. They use the word const, and they are not changing. Whoops, not $100. That's a big, expensive pizza. And then I'm going to make one for toppings. You could easily make one for each individual topping, like one for pepperoni, but they're all the same price, 75 cents. So I'm just going to simplify that down to just one thing at 75 cents. I'm just going to close this because it's distracting me. Okay, but that's not all. There's a couple other constants I can think of. The price of taxes, or the rate of these two taxes, is not changing. So I can use those as constants as well. So I can make a constant for the PST, and what it says it is 7%. Now to write 7% as a variable, you have to write it as 0.07. And then the constant for GST is 5%. So there's all our constants. These are things that aren't changing in our program. These prices aren't changing, the price of a topping isn't changing, and these two taxes aren't. Now I'm going to make all the variables, things that are changing. So for example, the subtotal is something that's going to be changing. For now, I'm just going to give it the value 0. We'll get to the calculation part in a second. The price of the real total. The price of how much GST taxes and how much PST taxes. Now, you might be thinking, well, you just made something called PST and GST. Well, I did make something called PST, but notice the difference. The all capital letters versus the all lowercase letters means these are two different variables. So the style in which you write code can actually help with this. And then also I need something for the change. Okay, now I need to check what the user actually picked. So what did they pick for all their choices up here? This is where the if statement can come in. If, and here you can find this on the hints right here. If the size is large, okay? So how do I know if they chose large? Well, if the radio button for large dot checked equals true, that's the weird, one of the weird things of a if statement is it uses a double equal sign to check something. Does this side equal this side? Like a teeter-totter, are they in balance? Is this and this the same thing? If it is, then my subtotal equals what it was, which was 0, plus the price of a large pizza. There. Added the price of a large pizza to the subtotal. Now I could put an if statement to check medium, but it's either one or the other with these. So luckily I can just use an else here. Say medium, because if it's not a large, it has to be a medium. But now I can also use this if statement to check a topping. So I'm now going to check the topping. All of them. Okay? So this time it's the checkbox, for example, for pepperoni. If it's checked, then I'm going to add a topping to this subtotal. Now I have 4 of these, so I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 of them down here and just change them around. So this will be mushrooms. This one would be green peppers, and this one would be onions. So there, I've checked all the toppings. Okay, now I'm going to calculate the rest of this is some math. and total. So the GST taxes equals the subtotal times the GST rate. The PST taxes is the same thing. It's the subtotal times the PST rate. The total is now the subtotal plus the PST plus the GST. There I've calculated the taxes. And now I'm going to show the user the values in the labels. So here I can kind of use some code that we had done in the reset button. I'm going to show the subtotal, the PST, the GST, the total, put those down here. But I'm going to attach to this, for example, the subtotal right here. I'm also going to attach a dollar sign to this. So for each of these, it's going to have a little dollar sign plus T. This other one's going to have a dollar sign plus the PST sign plus the total. And you know what? Let's test this at this point. That's a lot of code before testing. So large pizza, 2 toppings, calculate, and there we go. We're getting a subtotal plus some GST plus some PST and calculating the real total. And I'll reset that. Okay. Now we have to get the text from the text box and convert to cash was a variable I don't think we accounted for up here. So let's make one more. Change and the cash. Okay. Now I'm going to do this in one step. Normally we would make a string variable, but I'm just going to do this. I'm going to convert to a double what's inside of txt cache.text. At this point in the coding, that might be okay, right? I get it directly out of the text box, convert it to the variable called cache. This again is if you're comfortable working with variables at this point from completing the previous unit. Okay, now I'm going to check the cache because I want to make sure they gave me enough. If the cache is less than the total, then they didn't give me enough cache. So I need to tell them that. I need to display that. And again, this is also available up here. Okay, you can kind of get that feeling of how that works. There's a couple different ways to do it, but all right. So if it's less than the total, actually, you know what? I'm going to back up a bit. We're going to calculate the change first. Change equals how much cash I gave you, subtracting the total. So if I was buying this coffee cup, which costs $5, and I gave you $10, it'd be 10 minus 5, and I'd get $5 change. This coffee cup is $2. I give you a 5. 5 minus 2 is 3. You get $3 change. Now I can check to make sure they gave enough cash. Because I can use the change. If the change is less than 0, meaning it's a negative number, then they didn't give me enough. So I'm going to give a message box and show the user that you still need to give me, I'm going to put a dollar sign there, and if I just put change here, that would certainly display it, but I'm going to show you how it displays it. So I'm just going to run it. 2 toppings, I'm going to give $2, that's not going to be enough. And here you can see it says you still need to give me $16.48, but there is a little negative sign right there. That's a little weird. So to avoid that, I'm going to take the change and multiply it by -1. That just turns the number positive, but it doesn't change the number. Anything times 1 is just itself. So now what you can see is it just says, oh, okay, you still need to give me $16.48, but there's no more negative sign there anymore. So just a little quick thing to get that done. Okay, but the else to this would be they have given me enough change. So now I'm going to show that in the change label. And that's actually already up here. Easy, didn't want to type it. $sign plus change. Okay, let's see how that works. So I want to buy a pizza. I'm going to buy a medium, no toppings. I'm going to give $50. Calculate. All right. So it's $10 pizza, 50 cents GST, 70 cents PST. So it's really $11.20 pizza. And I get $38 back in change. That seems to work well. I'm going to reset it. Large 3-topping pizza, going to give $12.50. Oh, that's not enough. You still need to give me $6.82. Notice the change didn't show here. So I'm going to give $22.50. And now I get $3.18 back. So it seems to work just great. Okay, and there is how you would do that one. Okay, so both of those are now done. Just gonna open the, yeah. So with that done, I'm just going to reopen the first conditional statements problem now. And now what I want to do is take a look for those of you who are doing the alternative assignments. Okay, so that would be this one. So I'm going to close all the other tabs just so we can focus on this one. So for those of you who are doing the website version of this, you're going to this website and trying your code there. Now to go and do conditional statements, problem 1 and 2, obviously in order to avoid having to do the design, it's significantly modified. You can see here, instead of entering just any score, you're going to enter 5 test scores right here. Okay, and then it's going to display the average. It is still going to check to make sure they're not over 100 though. That part is still true. Okay, so how would I do that? Well, with this particular program, try and zoom in a bit. Now do the console.writeLine. And you can display that you want to enter the, I'll do this, first number. So that's how that would go. And then number 1, I'll just shorten it to that, would be equal to, what we should be doing with this is, as you can see in the example in this one, is we will do the read line method to read in a line of code from this thing. We'll read it in. So a string value 1 equals console dot reads it in, and then a double called score1 equals convert dot to a double our value 1. So that's how it would do it there. And we would do this for all 4 numbers. So, but before I do that, I'm going to check it. If if score 1 is greater than 100, they can't enter that type of score. I can't do a message box, but I can do a console.writeLine. And I can say, or must be under 100. Okay, so this big chunk of code right here would be true for all 4 numbers. So the second number, third number, the fourth number. So as I enter the fourth number, value 4, score 4, value 4, score 4. I would enter the third number, value 3, score 3, etc. And the second number, value 2, score 2, 2, and 2. We're also going to, at the beginning of this, don't forget we're still going to need to put in comments and stuff like that. We're going to make our sum variable, and it's equal to 0, and our count variable equal to 0. And now we can add our else to all these. So the sum equals the sum plus score 1. Count equals count plus 1. Very similar to the code we did in the Visual Studio version. I'm going to add that to each if statement, except change this to score 2. Then this if statement, change that to score 3. And this one, 4. And finally, I can calculate the average the same way I did in the visual version. I can take the sum and divide it by the count. And then I can use the console.writeLine to spit out that the average is Okay. Let's give it a whirl, see if it works. And we'll run it. So the first number is 70. Second number is 200. Must be under 100. Third number is 85. And the fourth number is 56.75. Here's my average. So that's how I would approach that problem, the problem 1. Problem 2 as well would be working with the pizza shop, where you enter the size, you have to enter the word large or medium, you enter pepperoni Y or N, mushroom Y or N, cash, subtotal, total, etc. So I'm going to go through that now as well with you guys. Okay, in terms of how I would do the modified version of this. Ooh, that's too big. Okay, so we'll go back to here and just get rid of a lot of this code. Okay, so I am going to steal a little bit from here because, oops, not this one, but this one. And that's because I would need the same constants and the same variables. Essentially. Definitely would. So I'm just going to put those right into here. I would have those same constants and those same variables. Indented a little weird, but okay, so then I would ask the user to enter a size. Okay, this size I would read in if that size equals the word medium. I would do one thing, and actually we'll do it the other way. We'll say if they say it's a large pizza, then the line of code would be the same as if they had checked it off. It would be this line of code. And then the else would be the same in that it would be a medium. So I'm just going to put that right there. And that would be the way it works there. Okay. Similarly, I would then ask the user to enter whether or not they want pepperoni. Do they want pepperoni? Yes or no? Okay. Let's call this topic 1. Okay. So I read that in, and now, similarly to the way I did it here, I would check the toppings. But instead of this, checked equals true, what I would say right here is if the topping equals yes. So if they said yes to that, then I will add it. And then I would do all of this over again for each of the 4 toppings, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so do they want mushrooms? Do they want some mushrooms? Okay, so I'd read in mushrooms if it's yes. Do they want green peppers? Okay, so green peppers. If that's a yes, add that on there. And which one am I missing? Oh yeah, we'll do it up here. Do they want onions? Uns. There we go. Spelling is a tough thing. There we go. So then I've got my answer to all those questions. And then just like I did here, I would calculate the GST and PST very similar ways. So I'll just do this part right here. PST and GST would be calculated. What would be different is now when I would show the users, it would not be in labels. It would be using console.writeLine code. So I use that instead. So instead of this, I would do a write line to display this out to the user. My closing brackets. I said this problem's a lot longer. There it is. And then I wouldn't need to get the text from the text box. I would ask the user. So similar to the way I did here, I would ask them for the cache. Enter the cache. Value, and I will convert it. Cache is already available. Cache equals. Okay, so now I have their cache. And then the rest of this would be very similar. There would be change, and I would check it with an if statement. What would be different is there would not be a message box. There would be a console.writeLine. Instead of this, it would be this. You still need to give me, and otherwise I would do this. Okay, let's give this a try. So I'll just start at the beginning again. You can see there's the constants and the variables. Here's me entering the size and checking it with an if statement. Here's me entering toppings and checking them with if statements, 4 of them. Calculating the GST, PST, and total. Showing the user those values in, not labels, but just in console. Entering the cache, converting it, calculating change, checking to make sure they gave enough, and displaying. All right, let's give it a try. So I want a large pizza. Yes, I want pepperoni. No, I want onions. Yes, I want mushrooms. No, I want green peppers. And I'm going to enter $25, and it's going to display my change. There we go. And I could run other tests, but I think you get the idea. Well, I think that concludes this week. My goal with you guys this week was to give you a rundown of those first 2, or part 1 of the conditional statements unit. So everybody, I'm going to end this meeting right now, and stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll be back on next week where we're going to look at part 2 of conditional statements. See you guys soon.